Marvin. Welcome to Attollo for our professional development series. I'm Emily. I'm our director of programs for 11th grade, and just wanted to say welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So Marvin, you are the director of athletics, student activities, and facilities at Ephrata High School.
I am.
And you're also the founder of Every Rep Counts Network.
Yes.
Before we kind of dive into what you do for work and why you founded Every Rep Counts Network, I would love to hear, where are you from and what are some of your interests growing up?
Wow. So I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As you all know, north side, I would say, it's south of Temple. So like, as you're going toward Temple, you see South Philly. The opposite of that is where I'm originally from. So anywhere from Allegheny to Logan to Germantown area, that's where I've resided. That's where a majority of my family lives. And as far as growing up, hobbies, I didn't play sports until I left Philly. So what I did and what I was able to do outside of, running around with friends and doing, God knows what, playing video games, avid video game player. I love technology. So growing up, I was just playing, old games like Def Jam Vendetta, like, and stuff like that, sports games and stuff like that. And I hung out with my grandpa. That was kind of, he still is the beacon of light for me, my mentor growing up. So that's kind of what my life consisted of before I moved from Philly to Oxford. So
when you moved to Oxford, what inspired you to get involved with athletics? And how old were you when you moved to Oxford?
So I was always intrigued with athletics. I've always wanted to play. Going toward the tail end, basically the last year when I decided, okay, it's time for me to move. I was introduced to a coach. His name is Joey Gripper Sr. He was known as like the best AAU travel basketball coach. Founded a couple AAU programs. He still has one now that's called Team Reebok. So everyone knows who he is. And unfortunately, he passed away not too long ago. So it was pretty tough, but he kind of showed me the ropes when it pertained to, just athletics in general. I wasn't skillful, but I had a lot of athleticism. And correction, his name is Paul Gripper, not Joey. Joey's his son. So Paul Gripper showed me a lot, taught me how to conceptualize the game, which led me to want to try more sports and indulge in more sports. So moving to Oxford, that's when I was able to participate in athletics. And that was my seventh grade year. Ended up playing football, and it became, just a passion from there. Went from football to basketball, baseball, you name it.
Is that something that you continued when you were in college?
Yeah, so there was a lot that occurred throughout my time at Oxford, from middle school to high school, then going to college. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of trials and tribulations. But I think one thing that stayed with me was my grit and, the pursuit of something. And thriving and persevering through those challenges. So going into college, unfortunate situations occurred where I wasn't able to play all 4 years. So that kind of changed the trajectory of my life, per se. I still pursued what I wanted to do within my heart, but wasn't able to play at the time.
And college is how you found yourself in Lancaster County.
Yeah.
Because you went to Millersville, right?
Yep, went to Millersville, yep.
And that's where you studied business administration.
I did.
And so why did you decide to study business administration? What led you down that path?
Because I was a biochemistry major in the beginning, and I couldn't pass biochem.
Understood.
I tried everything, like stayed up all night and studied. I worked with those who, were persevering through biochem classes, and it just wasn't for me. Maybe it's just, at that time, I think that was like the fork in the road for me to say, hey, yes, I want to do something within athletics, and I thought it was athletic training at the time, so that's why, hence I wanted to, be a biochem major. But then something dawned on me where I said, hey, I think business is more applicable to what I would like to do because, that's how this country runs. It's how the world runs, through business. So let me pick something that could be ubiquitous in my life, and then start molding and the niche and where I want to go.
That's something that I found very common within our students who are in our exploratory program Startup, which is our entrepreneurship program. Not all of them want to necessarily start their own business, but they're realizing at a young age, which is great, that business is going to be a part of any aspect of your life. Because you're either going to be receiving some sort of business or giving some sort of business out. So you went from Millersville, and then what did you ever, I guess, let me rephrase. You spent most of your time in Pennsylvania. You went from Philly to Oxford to Millersville. What made you decide to leave Pennsylvania to pursue a master's degree?
Interestingly enough, it was a online program, but you had to attend the first portion of your scholarship. You had to attend the campus. Then you had to come back. So, the first year, maybe that week, my first semester, that week, traveled to Arkansas, then came back, and then completed my entire master's program while pursuing other endeavors to get toward my goal, which was to become an athletic administrator.
And that's what you studied, was a Master of Education in Athletic Administration.
For the University of Arkansas?
For the University of Arkansas State University.
So yeah, it was athletic administration.
Very cool. What was that experience like, leaving the state for the first time? Or not, I guess not the first time, but to live somewhere and be in that community?
It was fun. I've always been, the type to travel. That's one thing I love doing. Even throughout college, and I tell my brothers this all the time, this is the opportunity to not just be a hermit and stay within the confines of the college or the institution that you're in. You can expand, you can travel, you can learn new things and grow. So for me, throughout college, I traveled to Colorado, I went all different places, and I knew Arkansas wasn't a huge feat for me, especially toward my own scholarship. So I had to do what I needed to do. I knew that it was temporary. As soon as I came back, I went to work and completed it, I would say, earlier than the time that we were allotted.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
So you had options when you came back to Pennsylvania to pursue this career in athletics and being a director of athletic administration. Why did you choose to stay in Lancaster County?
So first and foremost, I always, for me, in Pennsylvania in general and in Philly, there were a lot of people that I, can empathize with because I went through a lot of what those kids are going through now. No matter where you go, whether it's Philadelphia, Lancaster, Harrisburg, York, Delaware, Jersey, you're always going to find areas in which you see the fortunate and the less fortunate. I was grouped in the less fortunate. And I understand what they go through, whether it's mentally, socially, physically, monetarily. And for me, I saw that there was a gap here in Lancaster, and I wanted to ensure that whether it's me indirectly or directly influencing them, I want to do something that I know that a lot of people want to do, and that's be a part of athletics. For me, I can't see myself away from athletics at all. But I told myself that there's leadership positions in any facet of life, in any sector in life. So why not pursue something that I'm already passionate about? And that was leadership in athletics. So doing that in an area where I feel like there's a lot of potential to influence the next generation of leaders seemed like a pretty good idea for me. Because I know that my servitude is only going to help expand the education and knowledge and confidence in others.
I guess going off of that, trying to, whether it be directly or indirectly, inspire our youth. As a Black African-American man in a predominantly white county, how do you make space for yourself in the spaces that you're in?
I break through barriers. I don't, my thing is I've learned, and through my mentorship, you know, I've had plenty of mentors outside of my grandpa. My grandpa kind of shared a lot of things with me that he went through in life, to a point where some of his story is breaking through barriers subconsciously. It wasn't a force, it was through his education, through his knowledge, information, through his personality, through his grit. And when you take away the color, you just have the humanistic side of things. And it's like, for instance, like I can say something egregious and then you won't like me anymore. Or I can go off of your vibrations and be kind, be nice, be caring, which we should all be doing. I have no qualms with you. I don't know who you are, so why would I act, you know, otherwise? So my grandpa, no matter who you are, he was able to break through those barriers by being his authentic self. It just so happened that he is African American. And for me, you know, I took a part of that and said to myself, okay, let me not think of color, although subconsciously I admit I still have that in my psyche, but I don't use that to lead me. I use my education and just personality to lead the conversation, to lead certain settings in a room, and to help, you know, I would say further develop my presence and what other people think of me.
So what advice would you give to students who might be struggling with their experience making space for themselves, who may not have had a mentor like your grandpa?
Yeah, so there's a book by, and again, this is, I'm not Islamic, but you can find a lot of knowledge in any book that you read, by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And in the first chapter, it talks about knowledge of thyself. So you have to learn about who you are, you have to learn about your history. And then once you know about your history, you start to realize, like, wow, like there's so much power, there's so much cachet, there's so much that I've been missing because I've been thinking about what I've been presented with, which is, oh, you're nothing, you're this, or you're less than, no matter what circumstances you are and no matter the color. But you have to know about yourself and the history about yourself before you can really understand where you are headed, like your true destiny is.
So Marvin, I've heard you talk about this theme of the value of athletics, and specifically how athletics is an avenue for leadership skills. How do you convey the importance of athletics as a complementary component to our education system to maybe individuals who didn't have that same shared experience?
Yeah, so athletics in any educational institution should be predicated on education-based athletics. So essentially, outside of the domain, the practice or the domain, such as, you know, basketball, football, and so forth, what are you learning through this application or through this channel? That's where the education piece comes from, because you learn a lot more outside of just the curriculum. You learn about the soft skills, you learn about the hard skills, you learn about how to interact with others, which is a core component of just life itself. And that's, for me, that's kind of where I interject myself and say, hey, there's a lot to learn outside of just throwing a football, hitting a baseball. Like for instance, like we just had a baseball game, and there was a guy at bat, and we were at the 7th inning, and we were losing 1-0. And the coach looked over at him and just gave him, I don't know, he just gave him a sign, because you know how baseball coaches do. They do all the signs. Yeah, I don't know. But that sign was intentional to say, hey, I believe in you, I trust in you. Now is your time to shine. That gave that athlete the ability and the confidence to do what he felt that he can innately do, which was seal the game, seal the win. Now, mind you, he was at bat and we had bases loaded. So all he had to do was hit a nice, base hit, get 2 in, and we win. And luckily he did.
Wow.
That's because he learned about persevering. He learned about determination. He learned about his willingness to succeed. He learned about how to take in the confidence and the wherewithal to win, not only for himself, but for the team.
So reframing athletics as the avenue to embrace these and learn about these soft skills that are really needed in other areas of your life.
Exactly.
Honestly, I feel like that's why I value Attollo so much, is because we teach our students how to solve a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
But that's not the main purpose
Right.
of our programming. It's really to teach them about our pillars and the importance of having a strong mind and holding yourself accountable. I'm curious, how did you first hear about Attollo, and what led you to be as involved as you are now?
Yeah. So when I had first landed my position as a first-time athletic director at Lancaster Mennonite, I knew about Attollo. Like, I would travel to certain like business events and so forth, and then some of our students were also a part of Attollo. And I met Jordan for the first time, and him and I had a conversation. And from there, we just built a rapport, and then that led to me, attending certain Attollo events. Not actually in this building, in the old building. And I got to see the intricacies of what makes Attollo so robust and so impactful in Lancaster and beyond.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I could not agree more with everything that you said. Once you hear about the message and the mission, it's almost impossible to not stay involved.
Exactly.
So thinking about kind of the work that you do as a director of athletics, what inspired you to expand your work in the athletic field by creating Every Rep Counts Network?
That happened organically. So I wish I could share like the entire process, like my entire story, but it kind of intertwines and it meets me to this point. So long story short, I landed my athletic directing position through faith and just through luck too. I know Jordan had mentioned that too, where luck meets preparation and so forth. And it worked out. So from there, it was through the mentorship, through the networking, that helped me become the athletic director that I knew I could become. So I realized that mentorship is huge in the young generation of leaders' lives, and in anyone's lives, honestly. So from there, fast forward to where I am now, mentoring others and sharing advice and sharing, honest, feedback, to them in regards to where they want to go and if they want to be in this position, what it is and what it entails. And I can be as honest as possible, and I think that's why a lot of people, whether they're aspiring athletic directors or those who have 1 to 5 years under their belt or tenure, respect me as a person, as an athletic director.
Yeah, when I was looking into your network and just looking at the different people who follow your organization on the several social media platforms, it was really cool to see people from all over the country who are following and listening to what you have to say and connecting with you. Which, speaking of, you had one of your videos. I just really appreciated this quote, and you mentioned, quote, "We all have stories, and it's just incumbent upon us to share those stories." How do you find creative ways to continue sharing your story? I mean, obviously, your network is one way to do it, but how do you see yourself expanding your reach? Yeah,
so outside of channels like this and platforms like Attollo and social media, for me, I'm a part of certain organizations, athletic directing organizations. You have the national cohort, which is the NIAAA, means National Interscholastic of Athletic Administrators Association. And then you have PSATA, our state organization, which is the Pennsylvania State Athletic Directors Association. So I'm pretty heavily involved in that. I actually, just this past, Tuesday, I had the opportunity of teaching a course on athletic administration and organizational management. And stuff like that, getting involved. Now, mind you, before then, and before the social media too, I was pretty reserved, because I respect I would say this, I respect two things out of my journey. One, I respect leadership. And I know that I'm not the most well-sound person when it comes to leadership because of my, 8-year stint in a leadership role. But then again, through my experiences, I could say, hey, yes, through my experiences, I can help provide sound advice through my lenses that can help you. And I'm not going to hold back and just give you some crumbs and just have you take them and then search for more and me not give you any. And I think through my candidness and as well as like experience, that helps me, in that position. So yeah.
Very cool. And I mean, this is a professional development series, and you kind of touched on this a little bit with the different organizations that you're involved in, such as the AAA.
Yep.
What are other ways that you find yourself seeking professional development, seeing as you've remained in the same career path? Like, how do you continue to grow and expand yourself?
Yeah. So for me, it's education. So I know a lot of you are familiar with Dr. Badiraki. And if you ever had time to speak with him one-on-one, you'll understand that like he's one of the smartest people that you could interact with. And I took advantage of that. When I see someone that has more knowledge, or if I see myself being the not so smartest person in the room, I love that, because then I get to take and regurgitate some of their practices and some of their strategies. So the conversation that I had with him, and he made a remark of this at the one African American seating, the event that Attollo had hosted, and he said his mom told him, one area, essentially like one area that a lot of African Americans don't look into for information is in the book, but it's essential. It's a critical part of, one's journey. So for me, I took that to heart, and there were some books that he, recommended. I read through them, and then I just became hooked on just, understanding information and just regurgitating information, and it just helped me see the world in a different lens, and helped me see myself in a different lens, and then that's what got me out of my shell to do more. So education is a core component of one's life. And that's why I'm also, pursuing further educational pursuits, because I don't just want to stop where I'm at. I just want to keep going.
Yes, you will be Dr. Sanders one day.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. I also just appreciate you reframing an experience that is often really intimidating, which is walking into a room realizing that you might not be the smartest person in the room, or might not be the most qualified, but that's really just a mindset, and you can always reframe it into finding a way to gain experience.
True. But there's also a thing too, like, even though you're not the smartest person in the room per se, and I mentioned this before, you have a unique identifier. It's just up to you whether you want to show it, whether you want to present that. So like, for you, like your communicative skills, like off the charts.
Oh, thanks.
So like, if you're in a room, if you're in a setting, show that shit, like embrace what you have. Because some people who may be the smartest in the room might be just reserved. But if they're introduced to you and you bring something out of them that they never thought that they could, evoke, then you have something there. So everyone has a unique identifier, unique specialty to who they are, and something to contribute to society in any facet of life that they want to pursue.
I appreciate that. I'll add that to my LinkedIn profile.
Yes, please.
Direct quote from Marvin Sanders. I do want to be mindful of time and allow our audience to also ask some questions, so I'm going to open it up to you all now if you have any questions for Marvin.
What are some books, podcasts that you would recommend?
So it sounds funny. Podcast, when it comes to podcasts, I like to be entertained. So Joe Budden podcast is like my number one thing. Not more so for the entertainment piece outside, I like when they joke, but the way that he articulates, or Joe Budden articulates himself, he paces himself. You can tell he's like well-read. How he speaks, you can tell that he took some journalism classes. And I think especially, and I learned this from Jordan too, like being a well-polished speaker can definitely get you from point A to point B in an expedient fashion for sure. So that's kind of why like I also watch that. Books, there's a lot of books. If you want to go like, for me right now, I wish I can have my Spotify listen here, but there's a book by Joe Ehrman, called Inside Out Coaching. All the Simon Sinek books, so like Start With Why, and all like that entire series. I also, there's one book like, so Napoleon Hill, he has like Outwitting the Devil. It's the one, Outwitting the Devil is a big one. Right now I'm listening to a book, it's called Mathematics by Dr. Nouri Muhammad. So he was a student of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and he just kind of discusses like how the mind works. And there's one quote, he says like, the way you view the world is just your mind turned inside out. And it was just interesting how he said it, because I'm like, wow, like, because he talks about like manifestation and what you think you do and what you do, you are. So everything in life that we see is just like our mind inverted. And then going to African American books, of course you got to read autobiography of Malcolm X. Like someone who was deemed as the most dangerous man in the world, not because of the being violent, it was his mind. Going from prison to known as one of the best orators, as well as leaders in the world. Do you want me to keep going? Soul on Ice, yeah. Soul on Ice, yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Thank you. I definitely wrote some of those down.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How I want to phrase it, but I was just curious. So you mentioned I saw you at the Casino as well, and you mentioned being kind of more reserved, introverted, but innately you are like a great leader at the school and the community. And I'm curious how you battle wanting to stay reserved, wanting to be more introverted, and stepping up to be a leader.
That's an amazing question. So like for me, like my reason for why I was reserved is because I always felt like I wasn't enough. Like, so throughout my life, I always felt like I wasn't enough. I had to do more. And even if I did more, was it going to be recognized? Was it going to be praised? And that is an issue too, because even if you do the best, because I'm still battling that now, where it's like, I want to do more. I want to do as much as I can. Sometimes that can equate to burnout, or that can equate to just not being satisfied, not taking time to look back at things in hindsight and say, wow, like I went through this, I overcame this. So I would say use that story and think about it more deeply, because there's a lot of accomplishments through your story that you're overlooking because you're always trying to get to the next step or the next milestone or the next this and that. And if you keep looking forward and running, you'll never be able to take a step back and look and appreciate what you have and what you've done. So I had to do more of that in order to say to myself, wow, like if I'm doing this and I have a strong sense of fire in my system to want more, let me just sit back and do that more. Let me practice looking back in hindsight. Let me practice self-reflection. Let me practice the concept of self-actualization. Because in order to do what I did, I had to have something within me, or the wherewithal, the knowledge, and the grit to do it. So I do have something. So then you have to shift your mindset to learn and to appreciate yourself for who you are. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Yeah, as somebody who, you said you're 8 years in, right? What's mentorship look like to you? How are you intentional about mentorship and grooming the next Marvin Sanders?
Yeah, man. Yeah. So outside of the Every Rep Counts network, it's just started. That's just more so just to share bits and pieces of information to get the conversation started.
Yeah.
And then also it's me continuously joining these networking groups, these national organizations, state organizations, and then reaching out to local institutions such as like Millersville, LBC Thaddeus, and those who are a part of any athletic directing or athletic management or athletic administration courses, reaching out to them and saying, hey, just wanted to introduce myself, kind of like cold calls, cold emails. I've started to do more of that. Outside of LinkedIn, I'll just go straight to the source. I'll reach out to the dean and say, hey, who is interested in X, Y, and Z? In fact, like my mentor, well, one of my mentors is actually the dean, and he created the curriculum for athletic administration through LBC. So I'll tell him, hey, whoever's interested, bring them to me. So there's a guy who I'm working with now, Jordan Prelude, who's a basketball player, and he's interested in pursuing athletic administration. But I told him, like, I'm not going to give you the cookie cutter like story or journey, because it's not like that. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of self-belief, and he understood what I had to say, and now it's kind of working on his behalf. So I think it's more of me just getting involved and reaching out to others, and then having that conversation and then building that rapport with them, and knowing that they have the intent and the commitment to want to become the next or the aspiring or the next AD, then for me, that's why it kind of drives me to want to do what I can and give as many resources as I can to help get them to where they want to go.
So what I'm hearing is you can't wait for anyone. You have to do it yourself. You have to take that first step and
You have to. Yeah, have to. Because if you wait too long. If you wait, you miss opportunities. If you are stagnant, you start to see the momentum shift, not in your favor. Waiting, like scientifically, it's a zero movement. There's no progression. There's no movement. So when there's no movement, like your physical body, then there's no movement up here. And if there's no movement up here, there's no movement here. So like, what do we do if there's no movement anywhere, if everything is stagnant? We become a hermit to our own destiny and to our own life. And we're doing the exact opposite of what we were ordained to be and to become here. That's what I believe, yeah.
Thank you. I know we have one more question over here.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned that as a Black man, trying to enter spaces maybe not made for you.
Yep.
You try not to lead with like race in mind. You try to lead with like intelligence and your personality. Do you think there's ever been a time, or can you remember a time where maybe you couldn't get that off your mind? You couldn't just lead with your personality, and has that backfired? And how did you deal with it?
Well, luckily I have. Yeah, I would say, luckily I have friends, like a core group of friends that I can vent to, because I'm not going to sit here and say that like, oh, you can't, you got to remove color over everything. No, that's just not what I'm saying. It's more so if you focus on color. Remember the stagnant mindset. If you focus on color and not commit to what you know that can be the potential that you to pursue in life. Like if you don't use your brain and use your heart as a catalyst to help further you from point A to point B, then you lose. In order to win, yes, subconsciously, yes, you can think about color, but then again, don't allow that to become a deterrent in your forward movement, because then what you think invertedly it will become, you know what I'm saying? So for me, in the beginning, like I said, still subconsciously I think about it, because you're never going to be perfect in the eyes of anyone else. But when I first started as an athletic director, you got to, so like picture like the statistics here. outside of like Harrisburg, York, and stuff like that, just in District 3 alone, you have at least maybe 5, 6 African-American athletic directors. Everyone else are majority older white males between the ages of like 36, maybe 50-ish. My first position was at Langston Mennonite, was 23, black male. Outside of, in that league alone, I was the only black or African American in my league at the time. Now, someone from York, Frank Hawkins from York, I think he was at York and then he moved to Donegal. He's there now, but before him, it was just me. So not only was there, like, for me, I always felt like, and I think that's what made me reserved. I'm like, man, like, how am I gonna be able to do this around people who don't relate to me? How am I gonna do this around and stand out outside of my color? How do I stand out from a domain expertise perspective or a leadership perspective, or how do I do this? And I realized that became slowly like a deterrent for me until I said, you know what? I realized one thing, and there was I was watching an interview with Dave Chappelle, and it's crazy, but he's a very smart and articulate fellow too. And he was talking about how when he was 14 going through like the circuits, how it was difficult for him because people treated him poorly. There's a lot of racism. He was 14, you know, traveling where he was at in the DMV, then 17 when he went to New York by himself, like, and there was a lot of things going on, but he said, one thing that I had to focus on and keenly focus on is the work, my work ethic, and the amount of work that I put into what I'm passionate about. So for me, I was like, you know what? Although I feel this way, I have to focus and focus on the work. I have to super serve my brain, my body, my spirit into learning about this domain, learning about athletic administration, and then using leadership as a catalyst to push that forward through my own, you know, unique individual disposition. So I did that, and the more I started to focus on my work, the more people started to notice. The more I started to focus on my work, the more my name got into, you know, local newspapers. The more I started focusing on work, people started to come to me and ask me questions. And I realized, okay, the more I focus on this domain, the more I practice diligently in this domain. I wrap that around, you know, my knowledge and my understanding of self, knowledge of understanding of leadership. I can be a force here, and not only for myself, but for people that I thought I couldn't relate to. And now they see me as a critical asset to them. And then I said, if I can be that way, then what can I be? How am I looked at from an adolescent perspective? How are they looking at me then? They seeing this young black male pursuing this path. Not many in the industry that you don't see many people like me. How did he get from here to here to here? So it just all worked out in itself, but you can't focus, yes, you're gonna have that within your psyche, within your subconscious, but you have to focus on the work. If you don't focus on the work, then again, you're gonna give those that you're thinking about the validation.
It's reminding me of this time I heard where it's like, you can acknowledge things that are in your mind, but then you put it on a little boat and you watch it float away. So it's almost like, yes, I'm acknowledging that this is something that's coming up for me, but I'm going to choose to focus on the thing that's going to get me ahead.
Yeah, it's difficult. But then again, once you realize that no matter what you do, whether it's a relationship, whether it's, you know, doing this, whether it's what you guys are doing now, it always comes with challenges. So like, for me, I like to magnify those challenges and challenge myself to get and persevere through it. Like, I don't think that there's one challenge here that I can't get through.
Leah, would you be our last question?
I was just wondering, what are some common misconceptions around athletic administration that people typically have? Or can you talk about like some barriers to getting in that field? Sorry, it's like a compounding question.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Like, why aren't there more people of color in athletic administration as well? What are some barriers there?
Yeah.
Misconceptions and some barriers.
Yeah. So when I started, and I had to do some research on this, Googled it, like, hey, what does it take to become an athletic administrator? And they always say, like, hey, you have to be a part of the community or the district that you're interested in for more than X number of years. And then it discussed having an education degree, which I wasn't going to go back to school for. And then it discussed being a coach of the respective institution that you're interested in, and then that can hopefully transition into that position. And none of that sounded good to me because it required too much time. So to be honest with you, so I said, hey, what can I do to kind of expedite this process? And it was one, I think the first thing is first is education. So you have to get your master's degree. That's like the minimum. Unless you have done a lot at your respective high school that you graduated from, and there's an opening there, and they know you to be an upstanding young woman or young man, you can go back and potentially get that position. But if you're not pursuing that or you're not planning to do that, then a master's degree is essential. I would even prefer doctorate degrees, so you're ahead from an educational perspective. Nowadays, the educational sector is changing. It's changing. So that's why I say education is important. And then you also should coach for that respective institution that you're interested in. That just allows you to be connected with or be in front of certain stakeholders that may know people who know others. I would say also, whatever institution that you're interested in, ask about their board members. Who are their board members? Or just do the research yourself, because in any public institution, they have the list of their board as well as their contact information listed right on the website. Know who they are, check them out on social media, see who their kids are. If their kids play a sport, figure out how you can embed yourself in that community and start learning about the students, start learning about the ones who know certain decision makers, and be authentic, and hopefully that might spread. And then a board member says, hey, I like this person. They're interested in this. Do we have an opening? Can we open up a position? Can we create something, an internship? You'll be surprised what board members can do if you're authentic with them and you're genuine with them. Now, misconceptions that this position's easy. It's not. It's not. I think even like our superintendent and assistant, my supervisor and the principal, they say like an athletic administrator is one of the most versatile but most difficult positions that anyone can have, because one, it's not an athletic directing position anymore. That's changed. And when you went over the title, student activities, facilities, I'm now a Title IX coordinator. Like, it's different. So it's very ubiquitous, I would say, but you have to be well-rounded in your organizational task management skills. Another misconception is that you'll get to be in front of the kids a lot more. You'll be solely focusing just on athletics. That's not the case. For me, because I have I would say a substantial team or adequate team, I'm able to attend, sporting events, but majority of my time includes meetings, having a sit-down conversation with certain team members to go through some ideas and strategies. For me, I'm a systems guy. I love creating systems. So the more systems we create that in turn become more automated, the more I'm able to be in front of the kids. But that's a misconception. And then another misconception is that you'll know everything going into the position. And that's not the case. I always say, like, your first year will be the most excruciating year. I went through depression my first year. It was insane because I not only had to learn how to be an athletic director for the institution, because every institution is different, but I also had to learn how to be a leader among adults who are serving as coaches. Some are tenured, some have certain expectations. And then on top of that, I just didn't know what needed to be done each season. So every season is just a new season. Every season is just new. Like, you have new challenges, you have new tasks, you have, new requests. It's just a lot that's coming at you. So for me, going from having to line the fields at like 5 a.m. to then managing games, leaving the school at like 10 and getting home and then doing it all over again, the first year, in addition to like learning all new things, it was challenging. So yeah, that's the third misconception.
So many questions, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's so crucial. No.
Yeah.
All right, so how do you lead and how do you have conversations, strategize with a coach of a sport you're not familiar with? Maybe it wasn't one of your sports, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know which one wasn't your sport.
No.
It's so petty, but like,
Yeah.
I'm sure there is a sport that there's people you have to lead that are leading the sport that they're the expert in.
Exactly.
Right? And that you're not. So how do you strategize with that vision?
For me, it's trust is huge. So I always say, you're in this position for a reason. We don't have to go over the X's and O's of things. However, your leadership, I will question. Like, I'm looking at how you lead, because how you lead will in turn tell me, one will show the results and the output of said athlete who's performing said exercise or performing said skill development strategy that you're, articulating to them. But if your leadership is a little skewed, then everything will dismantle. How you teach, how you strategize. So I'm looking at the leadership portion of a coach, because you're in that position for a reason. You know your X's and O's, but how do you articulate that through your leadership? Are you an authoritative, leader? Which I would say, if you have one of those, then it's not conducive to our kids' holistic success. Are you a transformative coach? Which that's my thing. I love transformative coaching and leadership. Are you a service-led leader? Are you a democratic leader involving all parties, which can bite you in the foot if you have an issue and then a parent comes and now you want to include them in a situation. But your leadership disposition will allow me to understand how these kids are going to learn, and then how they're going to develop, not just from a domain expertise standpoint, but holistically. So I don't even look at, what they're doing from an X's and O's standpoint. It's how is your leadership, aligning with what I believe your leadership should produce, and then what are the kids gaining from said leadership?
I have one more.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, but you might not. You're like, okay. No, this is two-pronged. I'm sorry, guys. This is the last one. I promise. Number one is, how do you measure success? And then number two, talking about Ephrata football, because they have gone through some transformation.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen the team in the past be horrible into being one of the best teams in the league, and just having a great system. So I'm just curious about those two things.
Yeah, so how do I measure success, especially in an education institution? How I measure success is I look at the student. Again, we can look at everything from a business lens. I'd say our customer or consumer are the kids. What we produce outside of our leadership is, our prowess in whatever respective field that we're teaching or instructing. Just so happens that we're in the ecosystem of athletics. So we're teaching and showing how to strategize and what you can learn from just this one-dimensional domain. You know, we can teach you teamwork, we can teach you this, this, and this, and this. But I also like when our coaches have a unique identifier with them that kind of blends their story with their leadership, because relatability is what matters. So for me in an educational institution, success, how I measure success is how the growth of our student athletes, you know, whether that's through their performance, but mainly through themselves as a person. You know, I've seen it too, where some of our kids who have had, you know, self-image issues or just intrinsic issues that have now been brought out, dismantled and brought out from our coaches, because they were able to, you know, find the kernel, find that seed that, you know, of the issue within, you know, our student athletes, and then provide a platform for them to be open, to be vulnerable. And then that kind of transition into confidence, and now they're better than they were before. And they're actually where they want to be, you know? I think they just need that helping hand. So how can we use something that, an activity or an extracurricular that should be fun, that should be enjoyable, how can we also use that as a channel for holistic development? And then the second prong is for our football team. The football team. I will say this, like, in short, my coach's mantra is win all day. So it's like win all day in the classroom, win all day on the field, win all day in life. So it's the holistic framework to help get kids from where they are and where they think they are to where they truly want to be. So yes, we were like 0-54. Oof, wow, it was bad. 0-54 to then clinching and advancing to states. And now, like, it's a standard. The standard is win all day. So if you are having troubles winning all day, yes, you will be checked about it. Yes, you're going to have that conversation with our coach, because he already knew that the kids and the team could be here. Like, the vision was win all day, but it was, hey, do you believe well enough? Do you have the faith in yourself to get to where you are at, where you think you are, to where you want to be? So that's why we're in a pretty, you know, sustainable trajectory right now.
Well, I believe you're very successful in your role. I mean, and my coworkers can attest to this. When we featured you for our Black History Month post, our Ephrata students were very excited to see you featured. Yeah. So I just really wanted to say thank you so much for your time today.
For sure.
And I would love to close out with a quote from your page. It was an African proverb. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I really do feel like your holistic approach to your role and how you support our students allows them to feel that warmth so that they don't have to burn down your village. So thank you very much.
Thank you.